Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Supatease video, and in this one, we've got the Havoc Demon Hunter. And do you like Essence Break? Well, I hope you do, because it's being shoved down your throat for Havoc Demon Hunter moving into Shadowlands. I've never seen an ability altered so many times to try and make it desirable, but now at this point we've got Essence Break on a 20-second cooldown, slashing all enemies in front of you for 406 chaos damage, and it increases the damage of your chaos strike and your blade dance by 40%. To me, this is now looking like a mandatory pick for Mythic Plus dungeons, raid encounters with lots of ads that spawn that are basically not single target oriented, and it's looking like maybe even a momentum build with Essence Break that's slowly making its way out of the woodwork for PvP. But at the moment, this is like the thing that stood out to me the most on Havoc Demon Hunter. If you're new to the channel, we're reviewing all of the specializations in detail moving into Shadowlands so that we can gather as much information as possible to make the right decision. My main priority in the decision-making process is how engaging, how fun, and how long can I play the spec before I'm bored out of my mind. Those are all very important components to me, even more so than performance. Performance matters because you don't want to be the spec that never gets invited to a group, which is why I do take performance into consideration, but it's not my main focus at the moment, especially before the tuning phase in Shadowlands. We're going to be constructing a tier list and organizing the specializations based on my first assessment here on the beta. Right now, I've got about a couple specs left for melee before I'm going to be pumping out that melee tier list, so please subscribe to the channel if you're interested in this type of content and gathering information. Do my best to give my opinion of it. And right now, from Havoc Demon Hunter, from what I've seen from Blizzard, from what I've seen from other content creators, is that everyone is just spamming nerfs. They're getting nerfed. They feel like poop, but spamming nerfs, nerf. Now, some of those nerfs, I believe, are going to be compensated in other areas of the kit for the Demon Hunter, and more importantly in the conduits. So when we get to that conduit section of the video, you'll see what I mean. But the main nerf was to their soul rending, their leech is reduced, nerfs to their blur, their damage reduction, and their dodge netherwalk getting its cooldown increased. I mean, these are things that Demon Hunter needed to have done to it. I mean, I've played Demon Hunter towards the end of Battle for Azeroth now, just about to push Gladiator on it. You can watch me on twitch.tv/Supatease. Oh, look at that plug. That was good. That was a good little segue. When I'm doing solo content like Visions, which Torghast I can only imagine is going to be a upped up version of a Vision, I don't even take damage. I just pull whatever I want, I kill all of it immediately, and that's it, and I'm done. So, I mean, yeah, if I'm looking at that and then I'm moving into Shadowlands and my AoE is reduced and my survivability is reduced, and I can't just pull the whole thing and kill it in one attack. What do you mean? Why are you doing this to me? Okay, yeah, sure. Like maybe I'm making there's a point there, but I don't think it should be like that where you're just this god mode character, especially in that solo content, which Torghast looks to be a focal point for the expansion. So it makes sense to me that they're tuning down the Demon Hunter's kit. And then obviously in PvP, you were also pretty tanky, especially in 2v2. High-rated Demon Hunter players will likely say, well, no, good teams will be able to kill you, and it's more particularly that they will kill you in a stun. Now, usually if the only time your class dies is when you are unable to press a single button in a very narrow window of time, that's not good. Like, you're a god class unless for this 3 seconds out of every 30 seconds they do enough damage to kill you. That's probably not that great. Great place to be for Havoc Demon Hunter. So bringing down the survivability, I think, is a good idea. Some things that I would like to see come back to the specialization are things like Bloodlet. Maybe not Bloodlet's iteration in Legion, where it was your top damage, your momentum, throw your glaive, the dots up, you're done, your damage is being done. But physically managing a dot baseline, so not Trail of Rune where you may have to talent in or out of it. Right now, to me, it's missing dot management. There are covenant abilities for dots, but that's a cooldown. I'm thinking of something that you're trying to maintain 100% uptime. To me, that's what it's missing, and that's what I liked in Legion. Even though the Bloodlet version then was overtuned, it was really powerful in PvP as well. But making Throwglaive more useful and bringing Bloodlet back in that sense, and maybe not having it as high of a damage output, I think would be more fun to the kit. Right now, they seem pretty sold on Essence Break and trying to make it work. I think there's even conduits that are built around this, so it's probably something you're gonna have to play with, even though from what I've seen from other content creators and personally playing it myself is like it doesn't feel like a button that Demon Hunter really needed to have added. I would have much rather this have been bloodlet than essence break almost, and just have a dot managed into the throw glaive. But at the moment, I would think in PvE that this is going to be very strong. In PvP, it's still yet to be seen. It's obviously not too good in 2v2 where you're only going to be hitting one target. I think in PvP, you're probably still running Trail of Rune and First Blood for the Blade Dance combos. But another interesting change was the only ability we got that was baseline was Immolation Aura. It's not as strong as the talented version of Immolation Aura, but we got it back. And they added synergies with the Unbound Chaos. So you can use Fel Rush after using Immolation Aura, and then a big demon charges into the target. I mean, that thing crit for 2,600. I've got 9,000 health, so like a third of my health. It's a pretty big chunk of change right there. At the moment, I don't see anything synergizing to reduce the cooldown of Immolation Aura, which would then create this build to be really cool. Utilizing the Immolation Aura to buff your Fel Rush to charge in for damage. You could, in PvP, combo this with the new Honor Talent Mortal Rush, which then makes your Fel Rush apply Mortal Wounds, which is 25% healing reduction to everyone you hit. You could combo it with legendaries when we get to that point, to reduce the cooldown of Fel Rush. And then you could be like this on fire, just demon charging in all over the place. I could see that as a potential build, depending on if they iterate on anything that has cooldown reduction related to Immolation Aura. There were big nerfs to Demonic on top of the Soul Leech, so instead of lasting 8 seconds, you only get last 6 seconds in demon form. So there's maybe they're trying to like force the other options to be good by nerfing it heavily. So things like Momentum, if you ran a Momentum Unbound Chaos like Fel Rush Demon Hunter build, or maybe a Nemesis Essence Break Cleave Target build. They're trying to... The main problem is with all of the build options is they're all competing for the same thing. A Demonic is just I-Beam for extra meta damage and AoE. Momentum is just for extra damage and AoE. Nemesis is single target. I guess that's the only real difference, is this would be single target. The main problem is everything that's built into the talents is about just how big AoE damage. Trail of Rune, AoE dot. Unbound Chaos, AoE charge. Fel Barrage, AoE. Demonic I-Beam, AoE. Like, Master of the Glaive Toss throws the glaive. Everything is just AoE. This is where I would have liked to have seen some builds and have a dot baseline to the class, and then maybe have some talent options that apply to the dot. And if it's 3 targets, you want to be bouncing your throw glaive with a dot like Bloodlet, and that would be a build option. Because right now it's just the builds that you have are basically the same build with a different skin competing with each other, and one of them's going to be better, and it's just a matter of when the tuning happens as to which one of them will end up being better. And that's pretty much it for the talents. So as you can see, it's nerf, 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 nerf. People complaining about that are not inaccurate, but some of those nerfs are brought back in the conduits. But first, let's take a look at the covenants. So Kyrian was pretty underwhelming for Demon Hunter, mostly because anything that has to do with putting something on the ground or standing on something in the ground generally has big drawbacks, because what if the trash pole moves? What if the boss needs to move? What if I'm a player and I need to move? Or what if the player moves? There's a lot of downside that goes into something that's placed on the ground. Mind you, there are other downsides to the other Covenant abilities. At the moment, the Vial is not usable in Arena, but I would imagine that it would have to eventually be flagged in Arena, because then it would be the only secondary Covenant ability that doesn't work in Arena. I feel like maybe they'll restrict it to maybe 1 charge only or something if it's too strong with 3 every match. But it seems really strange that Kyrian would be the only Covenant that doesn't get a secondary effect in rated PvP combat. But at the moment, maybe in PvE this ends up being really strong just for AoE and Mythic Plus, again maybe with the Essence Break build. And just generating a lot of soul fragments and then running talents to get energy back on them and heal yourself so that you can spam out big chaos strikes during that Essence Break window. I could see it working for Mythic Plus. Like, it's not a terrible pick. It's just, to me, it has a lot of drawbacks, and it's not as cool and exciting, mostly because I've played some Vengeance, and it's basically a sigil like Vengeance. I mean, it is labeled sigil, so I'm used to that gameplay, so it's not too new to me. Venthyr, Demon Hunter Covenant abilities, Sinful Brand. This does insane damage. And I mean, if you just read the tooltip of this, you'd be like, wow, I'm picking this all the time. Why am I not picking this, right? Like, reduce their melee attack and casting attack speeds by 30%. It does huge damage at the moment. If it stays like this, it's, I would think, is easily the hardest hitting ability in the game. It's very similar to Fiery Brand. They're kind of just like taking from the Vengeance build and then putting them as baseline Covenant abilities. So this is like super powerful dot. When you use Metamorphosis, you'll also apply Sinful Brand to all nearby enemies. So you could have a massive effect if the enemy team stacks up and you activate Metamorphosis on them to reduce their cast speeds. On healers, imagine being a healer and having your cast speed reduced by 30% with a Demon Hunter chasing you down, right? Look at this. It's absolutely insane. You want to know the downside? It can be dispelled. Pretty big downside. You get all these extra benefits, but it can be removed with one global cooldown. So now it's not providing any. This opens up the table, though, for honor talents in PvP, like Eye of Leothras. In PvE, you don't care, right? The monsters aren't dispelling it, so this thing is just nuts. In PvE, you provide a lot of utility to your team as well by reducing melee attack speeds on the tank, reducing cast speeds if there are a lot of monsters that are casting spells that need to be disrupted. It has lots of utility there. And you still have the Door of Shadows for extra mobility, but does Demon Hunter really need extra mobility? And I think for the most part, the Venthyr Covenant Soulbinds, based on their damage, is some of the highest. So in PvE, I feel like Venthyr is kind of a no-brainer at the moment. And then in PvP, it seems like a pretty no-brainer too. You'll just need to play with other classes that help you with the spells. So with Curses coming back to Warlocks and now Mortal Strike being available for Demon Hunters in PvP, Warlocks have Curses that have no cooldowns that do similar effects to the Sinful Brand. And healers will need to debate, do I dispel off Curse of Tongues that is making my mage do nothing? If I do, I'll get Sinful Brand. There's going to be a lot more decision making when it comes to your dispel decisions moving into Shadowlands. So even though that is a drawback, I think that it opens up the Demon Hunter to have opportunities to play new things in PvP, and it's still just a really good option with a lot of playability around it. Necrolord Demon Hunter Covenant ability is Fodder to the Flame. It's a really cool idea, and fantasy-wise, it's a really cool idea, but it has very similar drawbacks, if not worse drawbacks than the Kyrian. So basically, you'll just call in a demon, and it's not an ally. You kill it, and it'll drop a puddle on the ground. If you stand in the puddle, you get increased attack speed. It might be good with like a Demon Blades version of Demon Hunter, maybe. If you want to run like an attack speed Demon Hunter, play with an Enhancement Shaman for Wind Fury Totem, try and build some synergies around it like that. The main problem is that you have to stand in it. Also, the other problem is if it doesn't, the demon doesn't die exactly where you want it to die, right? Like it's an AI controlled enemy that can, I believe can be damaged by anyone in your group. So it might just randomly die to AoE before it even gets to where you want it to go. So in PvE, you probably have pretty good control of it. And then you'll know where if the monsters are moving or not, depending on your tank. But in PvP, it's big drawbacks. The guaranteed effect from it is that you get your passive, which is just 20% damage buff when you kill a demon. So you can get a pretty good chunk of change in terms of damage, but there's a lot of downsides to it. It's not one that, even though it seems fun, it's kind of cheeky. It's a different idea for sure. It might need some work. Maybe like the puddle, you pick up the puddle and the puddle follows you when you move or something, but at the moment, it seems like a lot of work for very minimal effort that can be totally negated by having a tank that's not in voice comms or by having the enemy team move out of it. Other than that, you get Fleshcraft, of course, which could have saved the Necrolord Covenant for a lot of specs where it's like their main ability is kind of like, but it got nerfed. So the ultimate form crowd control immunity was nerfed. It's only crowd control immunity while you channel it, which is for 4 seconds. And if you're interrupted, then you stop channeling and you stop being immune. You do get the benefit of going immune for 4 seconds if you finish the channel. So you might want to try and sneak away, channel this, get 4 seconds of immunity to go in Metamorphosis and hopefully not be crowd controlled for a couple of global cooldowns. But it seems kind of difficult to utilize. Maybe in Mythic Plus, we see like if a monster's casting a big stun, and you can taunt and then start channeling Fleshcraft right before it starts and then soak the crowd control or something like that. It could be good. Oh, that's something that I missed for Demon Hunters is that I was right in my first assessment when I first looked at this, and everyone was like, "You're wrong. It's gonna dodge still. You're wrong." And that now it doesn't. Blade Dance doesn't dodge anymore. You see it on the tooltip. No dodge. Baseline, it doesn't dodge. The only time it dodges is when you're in Metamorphosis. You'll see the tooltip change, 100% chance to dodge. So this has a couple of repercussions. In PvE, you won't be able to help soak mechanics like in Tol Dagor on the last boss with the gunshot unless you save your Metamorphosis. So you might choose to drop damage to immune a mechanic, which has some playability around it. In PvP, you don't need to worry about Demon Hunters accidentally dodging every single thing you're doing all the time. You just need to be aware of it when they're in their Metamorphosis form. So it's probably a good change overall, but of course, again, nerf, so it's not going to feel good. If you enjoyed that as a mechanic, or if you enjoyed dodging things frequently in PvP, it's not going to feel good. Night Fae Demon Hunter Covenant ability. This stood out to me to be a solid PvP option, mostly because Demon Hunters have similar downsides to Balance Druids in PvP, where they don't have slows, and the Soulbinds that you get are almost all built around slows for the Night Fae. Plus the hunt, which is basically just copy pasta from Heroes of the Storm Illidan. You just charge the target, you do a ton of damage, and you mark them so you can keep charging through them through pillars. If you already thought it was annoying to get away from Mana Rift on a Demon Hunter in 2s, I can't imagine with this. Like, you are not getting away. This absolutely counters Mistweavers. So if you really just want to make Mistweaver monks, maybe even mages, just any class that Windwalker monks that try and run away from you, they are not getting away from you in PvP with this. Now in PvE, could be kind of meh. I mean, you already got enough mobility. You don't have a problem getting around the monsters that are right in front of you. And I'm not sold on it doing enough damage that it makes up for that. Maybe with the conduits that amplify its effect, it could. But this is, to me, a much more PvP focused Covenant ability, unless you wanted to go for the cheat death effect and bring that as a passive. But its main effect to me stands out more so for PvP. It's fun. You just Superman. All right. Now down here, you still got the Soul Shape, which has been buffed a lot to try and compensate for other classes having the ability to shapeshift or dash already. So you'll get 50% movement speed and be able to blink on top of blink, on top of blink, on top of blink on Fel Rush cooldown legendary, and more blinks, more blinks, more blinks, more. It's more and more and more of the thing that you already have. And to me, it's like, what does Demon Hunter not have? Doesn't have a dot. Well, the only thing that's so far that's new that's a dot is a 1 minute cooldown dot. Like, I feel like damage over time gameplay and maintaining a damage over time effect is fun. Please give them a dot. Some kind of dot. I was talking about Bloodlight because Bloodlight used to be the dot, but it seems like to me they're just putting more of what it already has to compete with what was already not being taken in most situations because it was already competing with itself. So it needs a little bit of diversity in terms of the damage output. There's too much mobility, too much direct damage. We need more dots, maybe some buffs. Like not buffs as in buff me by 20%, like buffs you maintain that maybe alter your spells a little bit or temporarily. These types of things, I feel like Demon Hunter at the moment is what it needs to feel less thin. But that's it for the Covenants. We've got the legendaries. So these are general Demon Hunter legendaries. If you want to switch between Havoc and Vengeance, then these might be a good idea for you to pick up because they will work for either specialization. One of them is to increase your size, movement speed, and melee range by 100%. So it's similar to Feral Affinity. You could get Feral Affinity as a legendary. And then you probably could attack monsters that are AoEing with whirlwinds or shockwave effects without getting too close to them. It's kind of fun. Like you look big. I don't know if it'll end up being too competitive. It's not attack speed, right? It's just range, movement, and size. So to me, it's more of like a fantasy legendary. I don't know if it will have a place because even if they designed one boss in a dungeon where it's like, yeah, you can attack the boss without even doing the mechanics. That's the one boss outside of all of the other things you need to do in the dungeon. I feel like there's not a situation where you can really make that legendary competitive. It's more or less just fun. So maybe you go for it as like a later one in the expansion. Dark Glare Medallion, I-Beam, and we don't care if Fel Devastation is Havoc, has a 20% chance to not incur its cooldown. That seems pretty good, to just reset your I-Beam. Do note, though, that Furious Gaze is gone from Azerite trait, so you won't be getting a haste buff. It'll just be the I-Beam damage, but that's a nice compensation to try and get some AoE potential from all the nerfs that have been occurring. This one could be a competitive one for Mythic Plus. Maybe not so much in PvP because I-beams are generally shut down a lot. It can be difficult to utilize them. Fell Bombardment, Immolation Aura damage has a chance to grant you a stack of Fell Bombardment, increasing the damage of your next throw glaive by 20% and launching an additional glaive. See, I could see a lot of fun with this if Bloodlet still existed, and then the Bloodlet would be buffed by this, so you could use Immolation Aura to stack up and then go for a big throw glaive that applies a massive dot to everybody and bounces an extra time. To me, that would be a lot of fun, but that doesn't exist. So, and throw glaive is already kind of just lackluster. This is a legendary trying to make throw glaive good, but it doesn't have anything initially to make it good. So to me, it probably falls off hard as a legendary with the way that Demon Hunter is built at the moment. Sigil of the Illidari, casting I-Beam, summons a Demon Hunter who casts I-Beam. So you get a little pet Demon Hunter? That's what it looks like, right? Summons an allied Demon Hunter who casts I-Beam. So you I-Beam and then they I-Beam. 2 I-Beams. They can't stop both. Again, this seems like a fun one, fantasy-wise, for Demon Hunter. Like the idea of just calling in an ally and then bursting down with double I-Beam. Seems fun. Don't know if it'll outperform the Havoc-specific legendaries, which I would think are going to be better performance-wise. But it's an option. And all of these would work if you want to play the tank spec too. Havoc, legendaries here. We've got Chaos Theory. Blade Dance has a 10% chance to grant you Chaotic Blades, increasing the damage of your Chaos Strike by 25%, and its chance to refund Fury by an additional 60%. So Chaos Blades being brought back on a legendary has really good synergies with Essence Break. I mean, if Essence Break ends up being the build, which it seems like they're shoving really far down your throat, that this would work really well with that build. Especially if it lines up while you have the ability to go into Metamorphosis on top of having Essence Break. It would have a huge combo effect. Darkest Hour. This is one that seemed really crazy in PvP. You would automatically trigger Darkness, and then if you run the Honor talent to increase Darkness's effect to 70% chance to immune all damage or all effects, this is just an extra way to survive burst damage at the 35% health margin. In PvE, I don't see it really having too much of a place. I feel like having Darkness just by itself is fine. As team utility, it's strong in Raid, but it's not as strong in Mythic Plus, so this would be more or less a PvP one. And this was a main concern for me with Havoc, is that some of its defensive options are so good that I'm worried that you're going to be inclined to only pick defense. And then in PvP, Demon Hunters end up being really boring to face because they just never die. And then you're also somewhat screwed for PvE because you took every defense option, and now your damage is much lower than all the Demon Hunters that picked the aggressive options, which then brought up the concern of this being a problem for other specs. But right now, I think it is noticeable for the Demon Hunter when we get to the conduits that you could build your Demon Hunter to be a tank while you're still Havoc, such as getting this Darkness legendary as a second ice block and have 2 ice blocks, and then run some of the conduits for extra cooldown reduction and damage reduction. It seems like Demon Hunter could get into a weird place if you're a PvP main where you want all defense. I mean, think about Battle for Azeroth, where it was you wore tank trinkets, you wore healing Azerite traits, and you just built yourself to never die. I am very worried at the moment that that's how Havoc Demon Hunter will end up rolling out moving into Shadowlands from what I've seen. Erratic Fel Core, the cooldown of your Fel Rush is reduced by 30%. It would be nice if it was also your Immolation Aura, and then you could run the talent to get that demon that charges with you. You could be like a linebacker football runner, and you could just be a Fel Rush build. I think that could be fun, but without anything to reduce the cooldown of your Immolation Aura, then you wouldn't be able to synergize them too well together. But it does make you bouncy boy. You're really fast. You're getting around the map really quick. Inner Demons. Chaos Strike has a chance to unleash your Inner Demon. This is just literally coming back from the artifact weapon, causing it to crash into your target. Chaos damage to all nearby enemies. Still a really good synergy with Essence Break if that ends up being a build. It would provide you good AoE. Probably better AoE synergies for this one in Essence Break than this. This would probably be more single target. But these two stand out to me as like the best PvE options for legendaries. And then the best PvP options would be these two based on mobility. And the downside of that is if you want a PvP main on a Demon Hunter and you go for one of these ones, you lose out on a big bonus not going for one of these legendaries. And depending on how much they're going to time gate getting your second legendary, you have to make a really big choice on whether or not you want to main PvP or main PvE, and that's going to put on a lot of stress in terms of what you're selecting, but I wanted you to be aware of that. Moving into the conduits, broken down into 3 categories: potency for damage, finesse for utility, endurance for defense. And this is where your decision making becomes really problematic in my mind for Demon Hunter, because you've got offensive options where Blade Dance has a 5% chance to apply Essence Break. Essence Break on your Essence Break. They really want you to play Essence Break. This thing has never been picked in 2 expansions, and it's gonna end up being the build. Like, it's gotten way too much attention to not end up being the build. It's even got a conduit. So if you're not running it, you could apply it to targets to increase your chaos strike. Really good synergies with those legendaries, and it ranks up. So at max rank, what is it? Maybe a 25% chance to apply Essence Break. It's going to be pretty nuts for AoE. Really good in Mythic Plus. Really good for raid bosses that have trash monsters spawning on top of it. Demon's Touch, Demon's Bite increases the damage of all of their abilities by 5%. That's pretty nuts if you can stack this up. Then you could maybe go for like that Immolation Aura, Fell Rush, summon a demon that crashes in for huge damage. After you get this Azurite or this conduit stacked up. And this is what I mean. These potency ones are so nuts, right? They're so nuts. But for some reason in PvP, defense always ends up being better than offense. And when we look at the endurance conduits, you're really going to see why. Here we got Growing Infernal. Immolation's aura damage is increased by additional 5% each time it deals damage. I would have liked to have seen something to do with cooldown reduction for Immolation aura, so it got more synergy with that new talent that they made, and you could do maybe a momentum Fell Rush version of Demon Hunter. But this is kind of just like, more damage over time, so be more aware of the Immolation aura. Seems like really good AoE. Less RNG than this one would be, but if you hit the RNG on this one, it's probably massively better. Targets hit by Throwglaive take an additional 8% damage from I-Beam. Again, trying to make Throwglaive viable as an ability that you want to press, but because it's not a build or spender, it doesn't fit in that. It needs to have additional effects to be a button that you press aside from like a ranged ability that maybe you snipe a totem or something. So this is to try and make I-Beam a build. Now, I don't know if Meme Beam will be a thing in Shadowlands with all the nerfs to Demonic and the removal of a lot of Azurite traits that made I-Beam good. So this conduit, to me, has a lot of risk of not being great. It's built around an ability that's already kind of poopy, and then it's buffing an ability that I'm wondering is kind of getting moved out of the way for other things like Essence Break or Fell Rush. So I'm a bit worried about that potency conduit. The Covenant conduits, so this is applying to the Sigil for Kyrian. Echoes a second, Sigil 1 second later. So it's already playing into the benefit of this is playing into the downside of the spell. If you put the circle down, the target has to stay there even longer to get the secondary effect. So that's I don't like it, but obviously a Mythic Plus for trash monsters, if it ends up doing the most damage and it's all about killing trash, then it's really good, especially fortified weeks. So it'll still probably have a place, but I'm not sold on that being very good compared to the other baseline potency conduits to the class. You can reduce the cooldown of Sinful Brand, and this would stack up. 1 second is not very impressive, so curious to see how many seconds you can get it reduced by. Nice little dot application. This wouldn't reduce the cooldown of your ability to apply it with Metamorphosis, but you can reduce the cooldown with Metamorphosis with Honor Talents, and then jump on top of targets. So maybe we see that as a build. Necrolords, Fodder to the Flame, increase the duration of it. So after you kill the demon, or the pool lasts longer. Again, playing into the downside of this, which is that it's stationary. And if the fight moves from where you are, whether it be PvE or PvP, it doesn't matter that the puddle lasted 20 seconds longer. Like, we're not standing in the puddle anymore. Maybe increasing the radius would be a good option, but even that is still it's still tough to utilize. Currently nothing for the Night Fae. I'm wondering what they could do if they would just do something like cooldown reduction again, just keep it really simple and basic. So the hunt you charge in, maybe add AoE to the hunt, so you charge in with the hunt and then it bursts onto everybody. That would make it more competitive for PvE. To me, it would make it kind of the best covenant overall, if that was the case for the conduit, but it's not available. Now this is where we get into the dampening for PvP. Not really a big impact for PvE. If you're only a PvE player, you go for all those buff potency builds. You're doing tons of damage in dungeons, I still think. You'll be fine. But in PvP, I'm worried about people building their demon hunters to just never die again. And we have this meta where the games take forever to end. And this is going to be a strong contributor to that. Fell Defender, the cooldown of your blur is reduced by 10 seconds. And that scales up. So it'll be even more. So it's already a low cooldown on a minute, reducing it below a minute. Remember what happened when Mistweaver monks had their life cocoon reduced and it was just everyone's using life cocoon all the time. This kind of stuff is dangerous. This is dangerous fire to play with. But I mean, if you're looking to make a demon hunter and you don't know what to go for and you're a PvP only demon hunter, that's a good one. Shattered Restoration, Endurance Conduit. The healing of shattered souls is increased by 10%, and you could run the build's Demonic Appetite to synergize with that as well to get even more healing. Note the healing part, like they nerfed Blur, they nerfed the healing, but it's coming back in these conduits if you want to build it for it. And then the final one is that your Demonic Wards, which is just passive damage reduction at all times, is increased by even more. So it was already not possible for damage over time effects to dent a demon hunter in PvP. It's not even going to tickle you. Damage over time effects not even going to tickle you. Potentially Chaos Bolt's not even going to hurt you either. It's 8% scales up. So yeah, these are really strong in PvP. Don't really care about them in PvE. Like if you're a PvE, you don't really care. You're just going to take these that increase your damage, take the legendaries that increase your damage, but you could be a demon hunter with 2 ice blocks with Darkest Hour, less than a minute cooldown blur, healing yourself all the time with your souls, and then just passively being almost immune to magic damage. This kind of stuff, like at the start of the video, we went nerf, nerf, nerf. Oh my god, tears are down my face. Demon hunter won't be playable. This guarantees that it's definitely going to be playable. I mean, getting Mortal Strike in PvP. I think the biggest problem with Demon Hunter is that it's not advancing anywhere. It started off as the specialization that was like kind of simple, just jump around, blast things down. Like it was like a Marvel superhero spec in World of Warcraft, but it just has not had any depth added to it. It's just shifting things around. Like, yeah, it presses AoE. Let's shift that AoE into a different AoE. It needs to have more depth added to it. I would like to see things for cooldown reduction applying to Immolation Aura, trying to make the Unbound Chaos talent a little bit more viable as an option due to that. I would like to see damage over time effects like Bloodlet, maybe enabling Throwglaive again to be an option, because right now it's just kind of meh. It's not great. You still have mobility, probably even more mobility than you really need to ever have at all ever in a video game, but you have it. So I'm not worried about it not being viable, right? That's not a concern for me in PvP or PvE really, because they're capping AoE and PvE on pretty much everything. So even though that is a nerf to you, it's more like equalizing everything. You might noticeably feel weaker in solo content if you're playing Battle for Azeroth like I was in Visions, moving into Torghast. There might be a noticeable change of, wow, I can't pull the whole thing and take no damage and kill it all? Wow, that sucks. Which, I mean, let's be real here, that's more than fair. But if you're thinking like Demon Hunter is going to feel different, there's going to be something new and innovative to it, I don't really think so. I don't think that's happening. And I think it could be really problematic in PvP if all those defensive conduit options and legendary builds end up taking over and you just have immortal PvP demon hunters. I'm a bit worried about that. So I'm like on the other side of the fence where it's like, yeah, you nerfed it, but there's so many other things coming back to it or coming to it that I feel like it's coming out even stronger than it was. But I don't think it's going to feel as fluid as BFA. It's not going to have those unique builds of like Bloodlet versus Demon Blades options like Legion. And it seems like they're really sold on making this Essence Break thing work, which I personally don't enjoy too much. It's just another button that it already didn't really need. It's already got like 10 different slash buttons. I would much rather see a damage over time effect come into maintenance for the spec to add an extra layer to it that I think that it's missing for myself personally. I think that it is a spec that I would get bored of pretty quickly, so it's not going to be ranked too high on my tier list. I'm a bit worried about it overall. moving into Shadowlands, but performance wise, there's no way it doesn't perform well. It's still got I-beam. Like, it's you still have I-beam. You're gonna be fine in terms of performance. And that's gonna be it pretty much here for Havoc Demon Hunter in Shadowlands. I hope you enjoyed the review. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you did. Leave a like if you liked it. Leave a comment down below if you think that I missed something, or if you have a creative idea to make Demon Hunters even more annoying for everybody else to deal with in the game. And other than that, we'll see you in the next video.